Dark Pictures Anthology has been shaking up the horror genre in gaming ever since players boarded the ill-fated Man of Medan in 2019. The spooky tale of Ghost Town Little Hope followed soon after in 2020, and now in 2021 we're trapped underground in a Mesopotamian temple in 2003 as the Iraq War blazes overhead. It's been delightful to see the Dark Pictures Anthology surprise players with unexpected twists and turns with every new instalment, and House of Ashes is no exception. So, here's our review. Before we dive deeper in, this is a spoiler-free video, as in we won't be talking about major plot points or twists in House of Ashes, or be showing a lot of footage from more than an hour or so into the game, outside what's already been seen in the trailers. But given that this is an interactive drama and everything you see and do is intrinsically linked to the plot, and as everyone has a completely different idea of what a spoiler actually is to them, proceed at your own risk. Enjoy!
Colonel, good trip?
In House of Ashes, the player will switch control between 5 characters, who find themselves trapped in long-lost ruins after what should have been a routine mission goes wrong. Soon enough, they find themselves stalked by something other lurking in the darkness. As is now tradition with Dark Pictures games, all of these core 5 characters can either survive or die, depending on what you do and what choices you make throughout the game. The characters are introduced broadly in the beginning, but you don't need to conform to the descriptions given of them, and even the individuals who seem brash or irritating in the beginning have the potential to grow on you by the end. House of Ashes leaves plenty of time for you to get to know everyone, and there are no weak links in the cast. Our personal favourites were CIA officer Rachel King, played by Ashley Tisdale, and Iraqi Army Lieutenant Salim Othman. There are also additional characters outside of the core 5 who are often the wild cards of any situation, the longer you can keep them alive. Mechanics-wise, players who have played a Dark Pictures game before will know what to expect here. As you progress through the game, you'll be given choices on what to say and how to act, and then at key moments there'll be a variety of quick-time responses you'll need to give in order to overcome obstacles. Mash a button quickly to close a door on an enemy, for example, or find a target on screen before your opportunity is lost. Beware though, sometimes doing nothing at all is the best way to keep everyone alive. Outside these call and response scenarios, there are also sections where you'll be able to freely control a character in third person as you explore the ruins. For the first time in the series, the camera in these segments is freely player controlled, rather than set at a fixed angle. Those worried that this change would rob the game of tension can rest assured. House of Ashes is still utterly terrifying, but the camera does struggle at times with the confined spaces that the characters frequently find themselves lodged in. Combined with the very slow walking pace and turning circle that everyone seems to have, no doubt a conscious choice to keep as much of that lovely tension as possible, it makes some of the moments spent wandering around in the game a lot less immersive than they should be. Given that exploration is so often rewarded with great and terrible secrets that lead to a better understanding of House of Ashes' story, it's a shame this potentially could put some players off doing it. This is hopefully unlikely, it's a minor gripe overall, but it does seem worth mentioning. It's really one of few technical issues in an otherwise polished game though, but if you're playing on PS5, remember to pull down decisively on the right trigger in moments that call for it. I'm fairly sure that one of my characters would still be alive otherwise. But the great thing about House of Ashes is how no matter what decisions you make in the game, sometimes it all boils down to one split second and how quickly you can react, making for an atmosphere of dread and pure tension that few other games can replicate. That you can change the course of the story so easily, and that the game ruthlessly saves in such a way that it's impossible to undo your mistakes, is brave and bold high-stakes storytelling, and it makes House of Ashes a thrill ride from start to finish. It's difficult to get into the story at all for fear of spoilers, of course, but we'll talk about what we can. In all honesty, when we first saw the premise for House of Ashes, we were concerned that this tale, centering around a squad of specialist soldiers trained for combat and armed to the teeth, would be robbed of the scare factor of other Dark Pictures games. We're glad to say that these fears were unfounded though. From the moment these Marines arrive in this subterranean maze, they are scattered and completely unprepared for everything that awaits them. It's incredibly impressive how developer Supermassive consistently finds ways to subvert player expectations in terms of narrative and gameplay, especially given that, mechanically, the format is very similar to fans by now. It's a great showcase in how the dialogue, performances and overall presentation of the Dark Pictures Anthology is only getting better with each subsequent instalment. House of Ashes is perhaps one of the strongest entries yet. Of course, there are more than a couple of obligatory jump scares, but the game does a great job of maintaining a more slow-burning sense of fear too. These characters are but children standing in the houses of the dead, temples built to honour deities thousands of years old. As you peer into the darkness, wondering what might be peering back, you get that this is an ancient evil, something far beyond your character's mere mortal comprehension. Mythology fans will find plenty to enjoy here too, as the game dives deep into Mesopotamian antiquity. You'll get even more background on its influences if you hunt around for secrets, but know that Demon King Pazuzu probably doesn't have the best interests of our characters at heart. The story perhaps takes a turn into the outright ridiculous by the end, though that's of course according to personal taste, but it doesn't outstay its welcome, nor does it ever become predictable, the cardinal sin of any horror. Outside of the scares though, the story just wouldn't work if we didn't care about those in peril, and these are some superbly crafted protagonists, carrying with them just enough personal baggage to make things a little bit spicier. You have Rachel King, her estranged husband Eric, and the man she's only recently started seeing, Nick. Even the most stereotypically "Hoorah" soldier Jason, who has literally scribbled "Remember 9/11" onto his baseball cap, isn't as one note as you might think, and should they both survive, his interactions with Iraqi soldier Salim are sensitively handled. Salim is by far the character you'll want to root for the most, a dad and a husband drawn into a conflict he doesn't believe in, who just wants to live long enough to wish his son a happy birthday. Thankfully too, the game manages to switch up environments just enough during its runtime that you don't get bored looking at the same rock formations over and over again. Roughly hewn tunnels give way to vast temple structures swallowed whole by the sands of time, where beautiful but haunting statues of the long dead watch silently from above. The cast are also following in the dusty footsteps of an archaeological expedition that went before them some 60 years prior, and finding out what happened on that ill-fated trip is just one way they discover that the walls are closing in on them. Not everyone will be into the tale House of Ashes is trying to tell, and indeed the way that it tells it. If you're the type of person to roll your eyes at QTE segments in games, you might not find this to your liking. And the game's incredibly patient approach to choice and consequence might lead to some frustration. Some choices you make have clear and immediate consequences, help a friend or turn tail and flee for example, but other outcomes will not become apparent until literal hours later in the story, and these can be so monumental that you would never have seen the connection save for the bearings feature in the game menu that lists the lead up to each pivotal moment step by step. This is good storytelling, of course, but if you're looking to win the game, you may simply need to lean into its replayability. The great thing is, House of Ashes doesn't feel like another morally binary game. Choices are almost never an obvious case of good and bad. The best way to play is simply honestly, either to your interpretation of the characters or how you see yourself reacting in a similar scenario. We were pleasantly impressed by House of Ashes, it's literal edge-of-your-seat stuff for a large portion of its playtime, and should you be interested, you can play cooperatively with friends as well as solo. There aren't big change-ups made in terms of gameplay, but there is a solid story here with some great writing and equally great performances, and that alone is worth an hoorah! We'll be playing House of Ashes live on the channel tomorrow, so be sure to tune in then. In the meantime, check out our past run-ins with the Dark Pictures Anthology. Subscribe to Eurogamer if you haven't already for new videos daily, meaning there's always something new to watch. Okay, well, we'll see you soon, but don't forget, don't let those ancient Mesopotamian demons bite. Bye!
I'm so sorry, Rachel. I'm so sorry. Ugh.